The first thing I learned about marrying an alien queen was that humans underestimate how quiet a palace can be. No crowds cheered when the doors sealed behind us. No music followed. No servants hovered. The corridor outside our chambers dimmed to a respectful twilight and then vanished behind a field of translucent energy. Privacy, the Keltari called it. Absolute and inviolable. I stood there in ceremonial whites that still smelled faintly of ozone from the planetary shield, suddenly very aware that I was alone with my wife for the first time. Queen Sfra of Kelt. My wife. She removed the ceremonial mantle with a precise, practiced motion and placed it on a crystal stand that grew out of the floor at her gesture. Her skin, opaline silver, threaded with faint bioluminescent lines, caught the low light and reflected it softly across the room. Her golden eyes blinked in sequence as she turned toward me. I had faced orbital bombardments with less tension. "This chamber is sealed," she said calmly. "No recorders. No witnesses. No observers of any kind." "Good," I replied, then realized that might have sounded strange and added, "I mean good. Privacy is good." Her lips curved in what I'd learned was the Keltari equivalent of a smile. Subtle. Controlled. Dangerous if misread. The room itself was enormous, circular, and grown rather than built. Living crystal arched overhead like frozen waves. The bed, if that was the right word, resembled a floating platform of woven light, gently pulsing in rhythm with the palace's core. This was it. The wedding night humanity had been speculating about for months. The union that ended a 3-century Cold War. The human who married an alien queen.
Me.
"I assume," I said carefully, "that we should talk." "Yes," Stra replied. She moved closer, her footsteps soundless on the crystalline floor. "That would be wise." I swallowed. "About expectations?" "Among other things." We sat, she on a curved crystalline seat that formed for her, me on a more human-friendly chair the palace politely grew at my request. The silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. I remembered the first time I'd seen her. Middle of a border crisis. I'd been a linguist, dragged along because no one else could decode the old Keltari dialect fast enough. She'd stood across the negotiation chamber, armored and regal, while admirals argued over star maps and casualty projections. At one point, I'd spoken out of turn. Not strategy, not politics. I'd simply said, if we keep treating each other like monsters, we'll never stop acting like them. The room had gone silent. Sfra had looked directly at me and said, "Repeat that."
I had.
Voice shaking. 3 months later, ceasefire talks began. 6 months later, she requested me specifically as her cultural liaison. A year after that, she proposed marriage in front of the galactic conclave. Humans called it insane. Keltari called it inevitable. Now here we were. "There is something you should know," Sfra said, folding her hands together. The bioluminescent lines along her arms brightened slightly, a sign of stress, if my training was correct. I nodded. "Okay. Our species does not treat marriage as humans do," she continued. "It is not merely a bond of affection or alliance. It is functional." "Functional how?" She tilted her head. "Marriage on Kelt is formed only under conditions of existential necessity." That made my stomach drop a little. "You mean political necessity?" "No," she said softly. "Species-level necessity." I leaned back. "Sfra, you're starting to scare me." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood and walked toward the translucent wall overlooking the city. The capital of Kelt sprawled beneath us, spirals of living architecture, rivers of light moving like veins through a vast organism. When the Kaltari face extinction, she said, we bind ourselves to what can save us. I stood as well, heart pounding. Extinction from what? She turned to face me, all four eyes locking onto mine. That, she said, is why I needed this chamber sealed. I waited. She took one step closer. Then she spoke the sentence that changed everything. Humanity is the only species in recorded history that survived what is coming, and we need you to teach us how. The words hit harder than any declaration of love ever could. What is coming? I asked quietly. The silence, she replied. I'd heard the term before, in fragmented reports and redacted files. Entire star systems going dark. No debris. No radiation.
Just gone.
As if erased. Officially, it was unexplained cosmic collapse. Unofficially, everyone was terrified. You think it's targeting you? I said. SEVRA shook her head.
No.
It targets civilizations that cannot adapt fast enough. It consumes predictability, order, stagnation. And you think humans can help because humans, she said, a faint glow spreading across her markings, are chaos that survives. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. So this marriage is not deception, she said quickly. I chose you because you are you.
But it is also strategy.
Integration. Preparation. I laughed once, short and sharp. Of course it is. She watched me carefully. You are angry. No, I said. I'm recalibrating. I paced the room, running a hand through my hair. You're saying humanity already beat this thing?
Yes.
40,000 years ago, before your recorded history. I stopped. That's impossible. You call it the Great Forgetting, she said. A period where your archaeological record breaks, where myths of devourers and night gods appear across unrelated cultures. I stared at her. We thought that was coincidence. It was survival, she corrected. Your species fragmented itself culturally, technologically, even biologically, to avoid becoming a single pattern. You forgot on purpose. I sat down hard. And now it's back, I said. Yes. And you think marrying a human teaches your people what? How to be unpredictable. How to value individuals, she said. How to break rigid hierarchy. How to adapt emotionally as well as technologically. I looked up at her. You could have just asked for an alliance. We tried, she replied. Your governments debated, calculated, delayed. And you decided to skip them. Yes. A slow smile spread across my face despite everything. So, you married the most inconvenient human you could find. Her lips curved again. You spoke truth to power without permission. That tracks. Silence fell again, different this time. Heavy but honest. Finally, I said, you know humans aren't exactly stable teachers. I am counting on that. I stood and walked toward her. She didn't retreat. You should know something too, I said. She inclined her head. Tell me. Humans don't survive by planning perfectly, I said. We survive by bonding. By trusting people we probably shouldn't. By choosing each other even when it's terrifying. Her glow brightened, warm and steady. Is that why you accepted my proposal? She asked softly. No, I said. I accepted because when you asked, you weren't a queen trying to save her people. She waited. You were someone scared of losing them. Her eyes softened. The palace core pulsed beneath us, sinking to our heartbeats. I reached out, hesitated, then took her hand. It was warm, real. So, I said, attempting lightness, what happens now? Now, she replied, we begin merging our worlds. I smirked. You know that's going to be messy. Yes, she said. That is why we will survive. Outside, the stars shifted as distant fleets repositioned, unaware that the most important alliance in the galaxy had just begun, not with weapons or treaties, but with honesty on a wedding night. The silence was coming, and this time it would find humanity had taught the galaxy how to fight back, together. The silence arrived 6 months later. It did not announce itself with fire or alarms. It never did. Entire sensor arrays simply stopped returning data. A spiral trade hub vanished between 2 scheduled pings. A listening post went quiet mid-sentence. Panic spread faster than any fleet. But this time, the galaxy did not freeze. Because Kelt had already changed. At my urging, and SRA's authority, the rigid command lattices were broken into semi-independent cells. Civilian engineers were embedded into military planning. Artists, sociologists, and historians were dragged, often protesting, into war rooms. No single plan existed longer than a week. Sometimes, less than a day. The Keltari hated it. At first. Then the silence struck their outer systems and stalled. Its advance slowed, confused by contradictory data, by ships that behaved irrationally, by fleets that abandoned perfect formations to chase hunches and gut feelings. Keltari commanders began arguing openly with their superiors. Improvising. Disobeying. They began winning. Humanity didn't send an armada. We sent people. Teachers. Psychologists. Storytellers. Disaster response teams. Hackers who broke things just to see what would happen next. Children's education modules replaced doctrine training in some sectors. Laughter, actual laughter, returned to Keltari halls that had known only solemnity for millennia. The silence recoiled, not because of weapons, because it could not predict a civilization that argued with itself, loved fiercely, mourned loudly, and still moved forward. On the night the silence finally collapsed, folding in on itself like a star choking on too many futures, I stood beside SERA on the same balcony where she had first told me the truth. The galaxy breathed again. "You are correct," she said quietly. "Chaos can be taught." I shook my head. "No." "Only shared." She turned to me, no crown, no armor. Just SVRA. "My people will write songs of this era," she said. "They will name you the catalyst." I snorted. "Please don't." Her eyes glimmered with amusement. Too late. Below us, Keltari and humans celebrated together, clumsy, joyful, imperfect. Exactly the way the silence hated. SVRA took my hands, intertwining her fingers with mine, a gesture once considered unthinkably intimate among her kind. "Our marriage," she said, "will be studied for generations." Because it saved the galaxy? Because it was unnecessary, she corrected. And chosen anyway. I smiled. The universe would always be dangerous. Always changing. Always testing those who tried to make it orderly. But now it knew something new. If it tried to erase us again, it wouldn't be facing a single species. It would be facing a family. And families, I had learned, were the most unpredictable force of all.